Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stress Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village so they can raise their neurodivergent children with confidence, clarity, and support. I'm your host, Frances Schefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent walking this journey with you. Whether you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube or listening later on your favorite app, we are so glad you're here. Now let's dive in and meet today's awesome guest. Matthew Zakreski, more commonly known as Dr. Matt, is a clinical psychologist and international speaker specializing in giftedness, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other forms of neurodivergence. He makes complex ideas about the brain and human behavior practical and accessible for schools, workplaces, and everyday life. Dr. Matt is the co-founder of the Neurodiversity Collective, author of the Neurodiversity Playbook, and a 2026 inductee into the New Jersey Gifted Education Hall of Fame. Dr. Matt, welcome back to the show.
It is so much fun to be back. And, if like podcasting is like dating, I think it means I got a second date, which I feel pretty good about. So, couldn't have gone too bad the first time.
Definitely. Yeah, I say that not everybody's invited back, but I know we had such a great conversation and we could have kept going on and on. So Kevin and I were like, yeah, let's have Dr. Matt on again. Um,
Yay!
yeah, because I mean, 2E is like this hot topic right now, and people don't understand it. I know before we jumped on the show, Kevin and I were talking about it, how in the States, it's like people are like, but they have a high IQ. They're getting straight A's. They're doing really well. They can't need an IEP. They can't be disabled. Right. And that's such a
Yeah.
myth.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because like living in between those spaces, it really like a lot of these kids are like, well, I'm not smart for the gifted kids. I'm not disabled enough for the disabled kids. So where do I fit? And the role of giftedness shifts. It changes how autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD show up, right? Because intelligence is a major masker. It's also a huge coping strategy. It's like, have you ever heard of the phenomenon of stealth dyslexia?
No, I haven't heard that one.
So stealth dyslexia occurs when a kid is literally lagging behind in terms of reading, but they're so good at picking up context cues from the overall story that they don't actually look dyslexic, right? They look typical in terms of reading skills. And that's when I'm in an IEP meeting, I'm like, okay, I know that their score says they're fine. However, I'm promising you this is what's happening. And it's like it's so hard to argue something that doesn't look like it's real. But this is where a gifted kid with dyslexia may present with something called stealth dyslexia because they can't actually read enough of the words, but they can read the words they can read, give them enough context clues to sound like they know what they're talking about, and then get the grade and move on with their lives.
Right. And a lot of times, when kids are being tested, they're testing things, they're testing the fluency, they're testing decoding, they're testing, comprehension. And they're not putting them all together. And I would
Yeah.
say that's where the problem is like because they can do each individually,
Mm-hmm.
but then putting it all together, that's where everything falls apart.
Yeah. And and reading is one of the most complex neurocognitive things we can do. So when there's that many moving parts to something, all it takes is one thing not doing what it's supposed to do to have things fall off. Like my colleague Austina Devante, she's out in Washington State. She is, she's like, we're talking about visual tracking. We're talking about, are the eyes equally strong? And that's the sort of thing. I'm really good at what I do, but I had never considered that as part of my diagnostic evaluation because, well, gosh, I just assume the eyes are doing what they're supposed to do, which is silly because I grew up with glasses. So like now I include bilateral eye tracking when I'm assessing for dyslexia because it may be a physical ailment in addition to the neurocognitive piece of it.
Right. And the eye tracking and the whole thing with eye, there's no, I mean, I know it's like the new thing, there's not a lot of testing, but getting the eye, the in-depth ophthalmologist, pediatric ophthalmologist assessment on seeing like all of that with the eye, because from what I understand, it can impact the ADHD, the autism, everything else, that the visual, what's happening visually can impact everything else. And it's, yeah, it just, it's, I know. So my daughter's physical therapist kept pushing me to do the eye exam, and I'm like, okay, okay, okay. But of course, it's not covered under insurance, and it's
Yep.
expensive and stuff. But I finally did it and realized, whoa, wait a minute. With both my kids, there's that additional level of what's going on. They haven't started therapy yet because it's a long waiting list to get in there. But I'm interested to see how, how that makes a difference. But it does, because when with my younger one, who is dyslexic and dyslexia, dysgraphia, anxiety, ADHD, her eyes, everything was like doubled
Yeah.
when they assessed it. But when you think about it as us as adults, we don't know, she doesn't know that's not normal.
Right.
Right. And that comes with almost everything we do. Like, and like kids, I don't know it's not normal to be struggling at this. I just think I'm struggling. I don't know that everybody else is not. And so
Mm-hmm.
what do we, how do we make that work for people because they don't know to ask for help?
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I often tell this story, like, you know, so I'm colorblind. And so growing up, like one of the first things they teach you in school is the colors, right? So I couldn't
Right.
tell the colors apart. So the word I had for that was stupid.
Yep.
I'm dumb,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And because if everybody else can do a thing and you can't do that thing, what becomes normal to you becomes divergent. And without support, it usually just reads as you're wrong or broken.
Right.
So that's why diagnosis is so important. Giving kids a language, giving the team a language to be like, you know, Johnny isn't defiant. Johnny's autistic. Like Sally isn't a space cadet. She has ADHD, right? Juan is not a know-it-all. He's gifted. He's smarter than the teacher. Like these things
Right.
provide such pro-social reframes for how we're talking about these kids, moving us from getting stuck on deficits and moving to searching for strengths.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's something I see, I'm sure you see also in IEP meetings a lot. Um, and I don't want to say necessarily with our more experienced teachers, but I was trained back in that day also when it was like, this is what the brain is and this is what children do. And it was never really taught of, you know, a child not saying something, not doing something might not be actually refusing to do it. They might not be capable. Their nervous system might be shut down. Something else might be going on that they just can't function, which comes to like when communicating.
Yeah.
Most kids, when they're dysregulated, they can't say, "Excuse me, teacher, can I take a break right now?"
Right. Yeah.
They're getting up and walking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I have that rule with my wife here at home. It's like if either of us get dysregulated, we just say tap out, right? Like, because you may not have the neurocognitive spoons to be like, excuse me, I'm feeling rather stressed and frustrated. I'm worried I'm about to have a troublesome behavior. Like, when I'm fighting for IEPs, I'm like, these services these kids have access to, they can't be contingent on something,
Right.
right? Because the day the kid needs that support, the most of the day they're not going to get it, right? And and think about it. Would we ask a kid in a wheelchair, like, like, oh, you better have good behavior?
Right.
Um, yeah.
And that's the challenge. Sorry, my headphones just shut off for some reason, but I'm going to go back onto them. So yeah, I mean, it's like it's people don't understand because I know I've heard a lot. Well, they were able to do it yesterday. I don't know why they can't do it today, right?
Oh my gosh, it's the language I like to use to this for adults who don't get it. It's like, hey, have you ever tried to diet? Like, have you ever tried to lose weight, Francis? Like, most
Yeah.
humans, right? Most humans have at some point or another. So I'm like, okay, so on Monday you had a kale salad for lunch and a smoothie for dinner, and you had a singular Oreo for dessert. And on Tuesday you had cottage cheese and yogurt, and on Wednesday you had a salad. You're doing great. And then on Thursday your best friend from college is in town, and you drank margaritas and had a metric ton of chips and salsa. Like,
Right.
humans are inconsistent and adult humans are inconsistent. Are we expecting our little kids with their developing brains and bodies to be able to be consistent every day? I mean, what a ridiculous thing. I mean, kids are not little adults, right? They're not, I was talking about this on another podcast recently. It's my broad concern about the STEMification of education, because robots always do what they're supposed to do,
Right.
and math and science are predictable and they're rigid, and like humans are the reason we call it humanities, right? Reading, writing, art, math, I mean history, theater, like they're messy, they're inconsistent, they're and like but if you're going to be able to serve kids and do so effectively, you have to understand that like what Johnny gave you in first period might not be what Johnny gives you in second period or third period, and that's not Johnny's fault. That's just the reality of working with someone with a developing brain.
Right. And it's, where are you in your space?
Yeah,
Like where is your nervous system? Where, think about it for even adults, they call hangry. When you're
yeah,
right? When you're over hungry, you're going to get angry. When usually things wouldn't bother you, but you haven't had that basic need met, and that's going to be an issue. And with our kids, they don't know enough to know, oh, wait a minute, I need to go eat something, or wait a minute, I need to take a break. It's our job to teach them with the school system and their parents and the adults in their lives of like, this is, let's look at this. What is going on in your body right now that is
mm,
making you feel this need to run?
yeah. Well, and let's take that even a step further. So, like, quick question: how many senses do we have?
Well, technically five, but I know you're going to say more, right?
Yeah, probably like somewhere around 12, right?
Wow.
And one of those senses is called interoception, the internal sense of your own regulation. And so hungry, thirsty, do I need to pee, you know, do am I itchy, like whatever those things are. And neurodivergent people tend to have weaker interoception. It's like if you've ever worked an ADHD client who sits at a table for 4 hours, gets up and goes, "Oh my God, I have to pee," and they like sprint to the bathroom because they haven't been paying attention to those body signals. So
Right.
like we're asking kids who have a fundamentally weaker sense of what's going on in here to do more work about reporting what's going on in there, which would be a hard thing for any kid to do.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's wild.
I was gonna say even adults, because like think about it, like how many times I've heard it. I know I've said it, it's like, oh, I forgot to eat today.
Yep.
Because you were so into whatever you were doing and were so busy and so focused, it was like, oh, oops, it's five
Yeah.
o'clock. I skipped lunch,
Yeah.
And for kids that know even less, are, their brains are trying to make everything work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to focus on all those little basic things, it's not always possible.
Yeah. Right. And
Yeah.
but it's also cool then for the parents and educators out there. It means that sometimes the solutions are actually much more simple than we think. Sometimes it's giving the kid a cereal bar or reminding them to get a glass of water. I always say when you're working with neurodivergent kiddos, the environment is the intervention, right? So if we picture a crowded high school cafeteria and Sally's sitting at the table with a bunch of her friends, but Megan is her frenemy and Megan's teasing her today, Sally's going to get dysregulated because Megan's teasing her. But I'm asking Sally to calm down while staying at the table that's where the thing is making her upset, right? So
Right.
if I ask, like if there was a hornet in your office right now, it would be harder for you to calm down because there's a hornet in your office. So either I
Right.
get the hornet out of there or get you out of there, and usually it's easier to get you out of there. But it's amazing how much giving a kid a 5-minute break in the hallway or having them take a lap around the gym or splash some water on their face really gives their nervous system a fighting chance to re-regulate. Because otherwise it's like, yes, I know that this room is on fire, but you need to finish your math worksheet. I mean, frankly, we should be paying more attention to the fact that the room is on fire, right? Like, at least I
Right.
think so. I think so. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And you know, I've heard so many times like, well, I don't know. They went from 0 to 60 so quick. And I'm like, they were probably not at 0.
Yeah.
They were probably operating at 50. And this one little thing went, boop, and that was
Boop.
the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And that's, yeah, and we don't know like the nervous system, but that's where it comes in. The hunger, the tired, the frustrated, something
yeah.
happened earlier that day. They're worried about something that's happening later that day, or whatever the anxieties are. And all of that is building up. And then when a teacher's like, you did that wrong,
Yeah.
boom, that's the explosion, right?
Right. Oh
And
my
it's
gosh.
hard. Yeah. And I would say it's hard for, like, I'm not expecting teachers to notice it and understand it and get it all, because obviously, with 38 kids in their class, even smaller classes of 28 kids, you can't. But it's being aware of what the environment is and what's going on. And knowing that, these teaching practices aren't just for our special ed kids, because our gen ed kids would benefit from it also. And if you,
Mhm.
like, I remember when I was teaching, and if my kids started, like, they were just getting antsy and things were going out, I'd be like, okay, close your books, everyone, up, let's
Yeah.
go. And I would do head, shoulders, knees, and toes, or I would,
Yep.
let's run around the room, or let's, do something, because it was like I was noticing I'm losing the kids.
Hmm.
And rather than signaling out those two kids talking in the back, let's get the whole class up,
Right.
take a break, do something, and now let's see where they are and if they can settle back down. And 9 times out of 10, they did.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like, that's a strengths-based approach, right? Instead of, yelling at Tommy and Billy for being dysregulated, you're like, you know what? This is a thing that we should really try and focus on. This is a thing that, like, it will help everybody if everybody takes a brain break, and that shows that you are a confident teacher, but also that you are paying attention to the right things. It is so easy to as a teacher or anybody who interfaces with kids to take it personally, like they are dysregulated, they're not listening to me. It's so easy to be like, these are bad kids, it's all this TikTok's fault, right? There are so many variables that we couldn't possibly understand, and like, but meeting kids where they are and helping to refill their tanks gives you a fighting chance as an educator or a parent to actually make a meaningful impact on what's going on in your classroom.
Right. And that's, like, I get blamed sometimes of putting it all on the teacher, or putting it all on the speech language pathologist, or putting it all on the parent, or whatever it is. And it's like, we've got to stop pointing fingers and
Yep.
blaming people. It's nobody's fault. This is where we are. This is what we have. This is who the child is. These are the child's needs. Let's work, especially at an IEP meeting, as a team. Let's talk together and figure out what solution can work for this child, that's not putting additional work on the teacher because they're already overworked, and that's
Uh-huh.
not making things more difficult, and that everybody understands. And how can we put that into the IEP so that everything's benefiting?
Yeah.
Teachers say all the time, well, parents come in and they're demanding da 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 da. Like, no, most parents aren't. Yes, they want their child to learn and progress, but they're willing to work with you. Let's figure
Yeah.
it out. What supports do you need? Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much about this is asking the right questions and understanding that it's like, it's never me versus the teacher or me versus the school or me versus my kid. It's all of us versus the problem. And the
Right.
sooner we start marching in the right direction, then the easier it gets. And I mean, these problems are not easy to solve. I mean, you mentioned 4 different professionals, and we haven't even gotten into the whole, what the rest of the Avengers here, but like, it's going to take everybody moving in the same direction to make an impact. So like, understanding that, making sure we all start from the same place is, it's not only, it's a super important part of the process that people tend to overlook.
Right. And it's knowing, that yes, obviously all strategies aren't going to work. What works at home isn't necessarily going to work in the classroom, isn't necessarily going to work in the speech language pathologist's room or the occupational therapist room, but it's hey, this is what's working for me in my environment. Let's see how we can tweak it and if we can make it work in your environment.
Mm-hmm. You
Right.
know,
Right. Because it's so like that's the thing. And it's talking through what's working elsewhere because it's things that like, oh, well, I hadn't thought of that.
yeah.
Let's try it this way. Um, and I know, like, I know going back to the twice exceptional, the giftedness, our kids, usually they're so gifted that they hide it so well. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't come out until much later.
Yeah.
And I've had it that I've gotten IEPs for kids in high school, like initial IEPs,
Yeah.
because they've been able to fake it for so long or mask it for so long and doing fine that it's not until high school that things fall apart.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's a huge, and we're seeing this in my, in my work as a clinical psychologist. I mean, I cannot tell you how many adults I've gotten diagnosed over the last couple of years. Like now that neurodiversity is more of a mainstream topic, people are coming to me like, "Do you think I am too?" And I'm like, "Obviously." Right? Like,
right.
you know, I work with a very scary attorney, and she was like, "Do you think it's possible I have ADHD?" I was like, "We've worked on many cases together. You absolutely have ADHD." But she's like, "But I'm not hyper. I'm not running around the classroom. I went to good law school. I was on the law review." I was like, "Right, because you masked it really well because you're really smart, but also you have inattentive type ADHD. So you're more disorganized, distractible, head in the clouds. So nobody noticed because like girls are socialized to take up less space, right? To go along to
Yep.
get along. So like, a bright kid who got pretty good grades, who was pretty motivated, who also really spent a lot of energy to get herself more energy than she should have had to spend to get herself regulated. I mean, like she's exactly the kind of kid who slides under the radar, right? And now she's in her 30s and but people at work are like, "Oh, now you're magically ADHD." It's like, "No, she was that the whole time, gang." But like
Right.
we don't have a system that honors those kind of journeys. So we just got to get them. We're going to start wherever we can start. And that might mean changing how you feel about this person. But trust me, they were that the whole time. I'm really
Right.
good at my job. It's hard to fool me. like,
Right.
like, oh, I'm totally ADHD. I'm like, uh-huh. Well, you were on time for your appointment. You filled out the paperwork on time, and you're staring directly into my soul. Yeah, buddy, there's a lot more to it than that. But
Right. Well, and I hear it all the time from parents. It's like, their child gets the diagnosis and the parents are like, whoa, wait a minute. Like this kid is exactly like me.
you're so close. You're so close. Take it one step further, right?
Right. And they're like, let me go
Yeah.
get assessed and stuff. And you're
Yeah.
right. People are like, oh, all of a sudden, now you're ADHD, you're probably, especially like our kids in high school that are now looking for help. A lot of times parents get accused of attempting to get their kids a leg up
Mm-hmm.
for the SATs, for the whatever the other ACTs, for
Yeah.
all of the college entrance exams. They're like, oh, you're just trying to get extra time so your kid will do better. And it's like, no, we have a kid that's ADHD. It just wasn't noticed before because again, they were able to
Yeah.
mask, they were able to use other clues, able to
Yeah.
do other things that got them where they needed to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's such, yeah,
Only once in my career has a family like we tested the kid. I was like, listen, your kid has sort of like a garden variety anxiety. Like, this is a high achieving school district. Of course, she's anxious. And her mom was like, well, yeah, but it would make our jobs a lot easier if she had ADHD. And it took me a second to be like, I was like, okay, but she doesn't. Oh, you're asking me to make sure that she does. I'm like, listen, that's why we have an ethics code, right? Like,
yeah,
you wouldn't ask your medical provider to be like, make sure Johnny's got chicken pox. Wink. Like, come on
right.
now. Like, so, I
But there
mean,
are, and I say it all the time with potential clients and with clients that if we don't see the data to support what the parent wants, we have that conversation with the parent. And if the
mm-hmm,
parent's like, well, I don't care if the data's not there, this is what I want, then we separate ways because
yeah,
that's not like ethically, I can't do that. Like
right.
if your child, everything with special education, as is data driven.
Yeah.
Is the data there? Is the data there? And it's always such an argument because, teachers are like, well, the data is there. And parents are like, well, where? Show us. And the teacher's like, well, it's there. And we're like, but it's not,
Yeah.
you saying it's there is not having the data there. If you have the data and say, well, like here are the times we assessed and here's what happened. Okay, we see it.
Yeah.
The child's making progress or not.
Right.
But you got to have good data and good, basis for where things are,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think this is why so many districts are trying to de-identify kids, right? Because if you go from having 500 kids in your district on IEPs, but you de-identify 30% of those kids, look how much our special needs services went down. Well, yeah, because if the kid doesn't have an IEP, you aren't giving them services, right?
Right.
But it's a post facto answer to a question, right? It's like, it's like, well, if we stopped assessing for COVID, our COVID numbers would go down.
Right.
That is effectively true, but it misses the broader point, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. It's you hear so many times with the higher ups of the district of like, oh, well, we have too many kids in special ed. You need to stop finding them eligible. Well, wait, huh? Like, right? Why is that helpful? Because now actually what you're doing is you're fixing the problem that the higher ups see of the too many kids in special ed. But guess what? Chances are your overall district test scores are going to go down.
Yep. And you're going to spend a lot more time fighting these kids. They're going to be in your office more often. They're going to be in the counselor's office more often. They're going to be suspended more often because they're not getting their supports. You're going to spend the time on these kids either way. You might as well do it in a way that's above board and aligned. And it's funny. There's a district here in New Jersey that doesn't like me very much. And where I was having the same kind of like, I'm tired of you finding all of these special needs kids in our district. Stop looking for trouble. And I was like, I'm not looking for trouble. I'm pursuing equity. Everybody should get what they need. Here's what they need. So I'm going to help them get it. And he's like, there's too many. You have to stop finding them. And I was like, you guys are very proud of your football team. If I found 20 good football players, you'd tell me to keep looking. Because football is a language you speak that's easy. Just more uniforms, more helmets, more practice time. But if I'm saying this kid needs, you have 20 kids who need an IEP in your district, and you're like, well, that makes my numbers go down. I care about that literally zero. I'm sorry, the kids deserve what they need, and we would happily allocate those resources to basically anything else other than special education. And that's why you and I do our jobs, right? That's why we wake up in the morning, because for every 10 districts that are like, we're going to do the right thing, we're helping these kids, that's our legal obligation, there's a district or two that's like, I don't think ADHD is real. And then,
right.
Then you're just like, okay, put on the boxing gloves because here we go, right?
And I would say you're being overly generous with those numbers.
I'm trying very hard to be nice.
Right. Well, but that's the thing. And it's, we get the psychologists and the teachers, and they were taught one way. We could talk forever, I'm sure, on autism, how it wasn't diagnosed before the age of 3, so they can't be autistic. Well, that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, why are there so many, why is there such a higher rate of autism now than there was? What's going on in our world and the environment? Well, we've learned more about the brain, and we now understand autism a little bit better. So more getting diagnosed where they weren't before because we didn't know what it was before.
Yeah. One of my favorite answers to that is Pluto was discovered in 1931, but we're pretty sure it was there the whole goddamn time, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Why are there so many planets all of a sudden? So our tools got better, right?
Right, exactly. It's so funny how people look for reasons that I don't even know how to put it, but you know what I mean? They're looking for reasons and oh, well, it must be because of this. It must be because we're using plastic more often, and not oh, wait a minute, maybe doctors understand more, maybe psychologists understand more,
Yeah.
maybe we're learning more about the brain,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. People tend to reject, like broadly psychologically speaking, people tend to reject explanations in which they could have done better and didn't. It's why it's so hard to convince humans about climate change, because it's really scary and it's a thing that we all have a finger in the pie for, of making the world a rapidly increasingly less hospitable place, right? And but because our brain's number one job is to protect us, our brains go, or there's an
Right.
option here that doesn't make me the jerk. I almost cursed on your podcast. Like but I mean, that's so it's like, if you're a teacher and you miss this kid having dyslexia for 3 years, you're going to feel like a jerk. You're going to feel like a bad teacher. Psychologically speaking, it's a lot easier to blame the parents or TikTok or too much
Yep.
or microplastics or back when my day where things were different. Like, well, of course they were
Right.
different. They were almost worse. They were almost certainly worse. They were
Right.
less informed. We know a lot more now than we used to, and you know, and it's the sort of thing, like, I try not to call anybody out. I try to call people in, right?
Right.
Like, because people are already defensive, they're already hurt, they're already overwhelmed and overworked. Like, making them feel worse is not going to make my job any easier. So I say, like, listen, all I can do is meet you where you're at, right? I mean, but we are all on, we're all here to help this kid,
Yeah.
and so, like, this, like, how, whatever we can do to work together to help this kid, that's what this is literally the only reason why I'm here. Like,
Right.
and there are a lot easier ways for us to make money. There's a lot easier ways for us to get fill up our hours in the day, but we do it because these kids need us the most.
Yeah.
And I pray for the day where our jobs don't need to exist,
I
right?
say
Like,
that all the time. All the time. I mean, I say that all the time. Like, that's why I have my YouTube channel. That's why
right,
I have 150 episodes of the podcast. I have over
right,
100 videos. I do weekly blogs, and my whole job, like, I want to empower families to be able to
yeah,
do this themselves,
yeah,
and that's what's so important, is that, people are like, oh, you're just in it for the money. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm really
yeah,
not. I mean, like, yes, it's nice to make money, but I wish I didn't have a job,
yeah.
because that would mean the schools are actually doing what they need to be doing for our kids.
Seriously, right? And
And
and like, and you don't think that the school's attorneys who are fighting you on this, you don't think that the people who make the Chromebooks that have been shown time and time and time again that to not support education, you don't think they're trying to make a buck? Like, come
right,
on now. Like, you can't strategically use that defense, because as long as we live in a capitalist system, we have to work or die. And, like, I know that sounds melodramatic, but, like, you know, there are some countries in the world where mental health services and legal services are considered, like Norway and Greece are two countries where what we do is considered like a social service. So it's paid for by the government, right? So we would be federal employees, and which means we don't have to charge billable hours. We just get paid, right? And like it's not an accident that those countries have smoother systems, because I mean, I know you wouldn't do this, but I'm sure some attorneys who are happy to rack up some extra billable hours,
yeah,
right? I need
yeah.
another yacht, right? I mean, I would like a place in the Hamptons, right? So,
I'd
like,
settle for a new car, but it's true. There are, and it's so sad, because there are, and, like, people are like, oh, well, you hear attorney and it's adversarial. And it's like, but it's not always.
right,
It doesn't have to be. And they're like, well, people say, well, I don't want the school to not like me. I'm like, look, here's the reality of it: is you bringing in an attorney brings in the school's attorney, or at least their compliance office, and somebody from central office. They have the power and the knowledge to do things that school based can't always do.
mm-hmm,
And that's what's important to remember. And it's not, I don't go in there adversarial of, like, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you must do this, you must do that. That's not who I am. We come in with, like, hey, here's the IEP. Here's where we're seeing it's not working. What else can we do to help this child?
yeah,
And it's so important to go back and look at that, because it's just, there's been times after IEP meetings that I've had teachers say to me, thank you.
Yeah.
because like the teacher knew it was needed,
Yeah.
but the teacher themselves can't always say it and can't always do it.
Yeah.
And we know the teachers are there for the kids.
Yeah.
We know they're not there for the money.
Yeah. Definitely not.
Right.
Right.
It's over, and it's sad because I see so many good teachers leaving the profession because they're just tired of it. They're
Yeah.
just tired of, you know, principals telling them they have to do something this way, and administration saying that way, and central office saying the other, and parents coming in and fighting for this, and it's just too much, and they're not getting the support. And that's why, again, like at my IEP meetings when I'm there, it's like I look at the teachers like, what do you need to make this happen?
Yeah.
What can we do to support you? I'm not expecting you to start now doing all this extra stuff. Let's figure out a way. Like, is it realistic to have the teacher sign off on the assignment book every single day? Is that something that you can do? No. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about
Right.
what some other things we can put in place that helps you so that we still achieve that goal of helping this child know what needs to be done and the parents know, so that we can put it together and help this child learn the executive functioning skills needed.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And it just like it it I mean, even just starting the conversation that way, like what feels possible, right?
Right.
Is exactly it. Because if I'm asked, I always tell my clients, I'm never going to ask you to do something that you can't do. Now, I might think what you can do is different than what you think you can do. But like, let's have an honest conversation about that. Because like, I often use this thing. It's like, I'm a 6-foot white guy from New Jersey. I'm never going to dunk a basketball. It doesn't matter how much I want to, right? I just that like that's past for me, and I've made my peace
Right.
with that. Like, but I can play basketball, right? Like if, so that's the thing. It's like what feels possible, and let's build out from there. And also telling the teachers why we're doing a thing. Like, why does signing the assignment book help? What does it do? It does, it creates accountability, which creates executive functioning through a dopamine circuit. I'm treating you like an adult, because nobody likes to do things without knowing why, right? It's like a universal human experience. Like, now treat me like a professional and tell me why we're going to do this, so then I can sign on to this authentically without, feeling like you're strong arming me into it.
Right. And I also like to put it in of like, when I word things of, this is the issue we're having.
Yeah.
Mom needs to know like for a high school kid, mom needs to know, or dad, guardian, whoever is the parent, needs to know what assignments are missing before it's too late to turn them in.
Yep.
So here's the problem. Here's a solution that I've used in the past. We've done a Google Doc that the teachers enter the stuff in, and that's work. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Instead of me coming in and saying, you need to do a Google Doc, and you need to do this, and you need to do that, it's like, let's take the step back, because it's also looking at the teachers all have different styles and different capabilities.
Yep.
And one might be able to use a Google Doc, one might not.
Right.
And so what can we do? How can we support? Who can we bring in from the team that can help support? What can we do?
Yeah.
And it's not like we see often, well, the child needs to bring the assignment book to the teacher. I'm like, yeah, really? If the child could do that, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
Right.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Kids, Ross Green always says kids do as well as they can. So if we're having this conversation, it's because the kid isn't doing that thing. Right?
Right.
I mean, that's it. Like, I tell a lot of my clients, like, yeah, if you were 6'10", you'd play for the 76ers. Right? Like, but you're
Right.
not 6'10", so you don't play for the 76ers. Like, it's amazing how quick schools are willing and able to move the goalposts when it comes to somebody not doing something for whatever reason. And it breaks my heart. It really does. It's just like, well, if they just tried harder, or their older sister did this, or well, these other kids are doing this. Man, there's only one Jimmy, and Jimmy can only do these things right now. So we've got to meet Jimmy where Jimmy is, so we can all stop having to work so hard, right? That's, gosh.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's if we make things easier for the children and teach them how to do it on their own, like that's the idea as the teachers, like let's teach them how to do it so they don't need it later. The work on the front end is going to make your job as a teacher so much easier in the back end.
Yeah, right.
Right, because like let's teach the child, like, all right, let's spend all this extra time in September teaching all the kids the organizational skills. And guess what? By December, you're not going to have to do this anymore. The kids are going to get it, except for maybe one or two that still need some help. But, like that's the idea, is that like being proactive of finding solutions before it's become a major problem is such the challenge. And I see that too often with how our school systems are set up. And that's a whole nother topic of discipline. Of like, well, the child did XYZ, and so they need to be suspended, period, because that's what the handbook says. And, I've had attorneys say that to me. I'm like, but the child did XYZ because the school wasn't doing A, B, C. And that's what we need to address, because suspending this child is not teaching this child anything.
Nope.
And it's only hurting the parents.
And the research shows time and time again that, like, what we're doing is we're creating a space where there's a vacuum, right? And so if we're not filling that time and space with a pro-social skill, then it just, it's we're not replacing it with anything. So kids now have less structure, less social support, fewer eyes on them, by taking the problem away from me immediately right now. I've let the problem, it's like, instead of cleaning your room, sticking all the things under your bed. Well, that plate of half-finished nachos that you didn't want to bring down now, 6 months from now is going to be black mold. And that's a lot harder to fix, right?
Right. Well, and it's also like, just looking at, I just lost my train of thought. Man, I hate when that happens. But like, but like, that's the thing. It's like looking at what's going on with the child. Oh, that's what it was. Like in the medical society, you go in there because you have a headache. Oh, here, take some aspirin. But okay, whoa. Let's look at why you have that headache and see if we can fix that rather than just treating the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you fix that, guess what? You're not going to have the headaches anymore. You're not going to have the behaviors anymore. Like just that simple tweak of, oh, maybe we need to let him go take a walk, take a lap around the school every hour. Yeah. And that will be what he needs to regulate. And we're not going to have the behaviors anymore, because suspending him isn't going to solve that issue.
Yeah.
So, but that's a whole nother topic on how our school systems need to go out of the punishment and start being the proactive. But, one step at a time, right?
Yeah. I'll just have to come back.
There you go. I just noticed the time, and I do have an IEP meeting shortly. So, yes. Dr. Matt, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I always love talking to you, and I feel like there's so much information in this little short video that we're putting out there to our listeners to help parents know, like, you're not alone. We're here to support you. We're here to educate you. You can do this, and let's work as a team to help all of our children.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why I love talking to you, because you're really, like, this is about informing the public so we know more, because when we know more, we do better. And, whatever I can do to be a part of those conversations, I mean, it just, it really serves the goal of helping as many people as we can. And that's always what I want to do.
Yep. Help the kids, because the more we help the kids, the better future we all have.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone in your village. Next week, we will have episode 155, where Robin Reinerson is going to talk about building workplaces for differently abled adults. You can always learn more and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.